think with me for a second. I want you to think about the music you're listening to right now. Go to your phone or whatever you listen to music on and think about those artists. Now, are those artists newer, contemporary artists, or are they artists that you listened to back when you were in high school? I know for me, if you were to look at my phone and my Spotify or whatever, what I'm listening to on a regular basis, you will find that I'm either listening to Disney soundtracks or pretty much exclusively pop punk and hardcore music from 2004 to 2010 when I was in high school and then college. Yeah. They say that the music that you listen to in your adulthood is pretty much just what you listen to in your childhood. I would argue that the same goes for video games. Now, I think it's only fitting that I got this amiibo from Papa Wampa in our Discord group, but there's some more to it than that. There are three franchises, just three, that's it, that shaped the very gamer that I am today. Those three, in order, were first, that's right, Zelda. I adore the Zelda franchise, having played most, not all of them, and having completed some, not most of them. The Zelda franchise is a franchise that I have fallen in love with because it was the first real RPG franchise that I experienced. Though it is more of an adventure-based RPG and not a traditional Japanese-style RPG, it is still one that I grew to love. The Japanese-style RPGs that I was first introduced to was Final Fantasy. Technically, the real first Japanese RPG I was introduced to was Pokemon. I was a huge Pokemon fan growing up, but I fell off as time went on because I fell out of love with the franchise and I couldn't keep up with all of the different Pokemon. I think after I got through Sapphire and Ruby, that was pretty much it for me. Was that Gen 3? Yeah, that's pretty much where it ended. I know there are great Pokemon games after that, but for me, that's pretty much as far as it went. Now, as time went on, I was introduced to none other than Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy X being the first real Final Fantasy that I played from start to finish. Not the first one I ever played, though. The first one I ever played was actually Final Fantasy IX. I talked about that before, where it was something that was unbelievably exciting for me and mind-blowing, because I'm like, this has 4 discs? You need 4 discs to play this game? That was something I couldn't fathom. I'm like, this is massive, this is great, this is huge. And I really, truly fell in love with the franchise at 10. Because 10 was where I understood the story. I could actually truly tap into what was going on. And while I was only in middle school at the time, I still could understand the ideas of romance, kind of. You know, you start to like girls at that time. So for me, I was like, oh, this guy's in love with this girl. And the angstiness of Titus was very, very appealing to me because I was a very angsty little kid. That game transformed me as a gamer, just as Zelda transformed me. So my first transformation went from playing Super Mario Land to Tetris from time to time, Kirby's Dream Land, and then I was introduced to Link's Awakening, which blew my mind, and then later, A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. 2 games that were just so unbelievable, and finally what locked it in for me was Ocarina of Time on the N64, and later Majora's Mask, which I haven't finished, and I'm doing my best to try to finish this month with the whole Discord community. Coincidentally, there's something else happening on Discord, but we'll talk about that in a moment. As I got older, more and more Zelda games came out, but I didn't play all of them. I never played Wind Waker because the GameCube for me didn't come till much later. I didn't get a Wii because I thought that the Wiimotes things for me were not really my cup of coffee, not really something I was super into, and at that point I had transferred all of my gaming on a console over to PlayStation. I couldn't have multiple at-home consoles growing up because I didn't have the finances for it. And so I was one handheld, one home console kind of guy. And so the handheld for me was, I believe at the time, it was the Game Boy Advance SP and the PlayStation 2. Those two in tandem were some of the most transformative gaming pieces of hardware that I ever played, going on to playing Minish Cap on Game Boy Advance and replaying A Link to the Past on Game Boy Advance. These games were a tremendous amount of fun and were very, very important to me. And I still, from there too, which is going to be blue, I still continued to play more Zelda games growing up. But back to Final Fantasy. As I was introduced to Final Fantasy X on the PlayStation 2, I got the Prima Player's Guide. I 100% of the game to the best of my ability. Final Fantasy became so unbelievably important to everything I did on my PlayStation 2. I remember a summer in particular where I was playing that game in tandem with my best friend at the time, Robert, and we were on vacation with my family. He came up with my family to go up to the mountains. Now, I was not a very active kid growing up. In fact, I was very unactive, and I have all of this coffee here and it's bothering me, so I'm going to wipe it with my shirt. Now I have coffee on my shirt. Whoopsie-doo, whoopsie-dee. Robert and I went on vacation to Mammoth Mountain. I, again, was not an overly active kid, so it didn't matter to me that I was in the mountains. I just wanted to play video games with my best bud. When we were out and about, we had to go do adventure things, and we did do adventure things, but when we were at home, at the cabin, he and I were upstairs tucked away, playing through Final Fantasy X, switching off every death and this, that, and the other, and just going through the story together. I had my blue Final Fantasy X player's guide from Prima, whatever you want to call him, and then we brought the PlayStation 2 with us. It was, I will never forget it. We were going through, I remember that was the place I battled Seymour, and I'm not going to go into any detail on who Seymour was, but I battled Seymour and Anima, and it was this crazy, insane battle that we were wildly underleveled for, and it took us really all night just try to beat it. We stayed up for hours on end playing Final Fantasy X. It was the most just crazy experience. And at that point, I was sold on the Final Fantasy franchise. I could not get enough of it. I'm like, this is the coolest ever. I love this franchise. And they said, we're going to release Final Fantasy X2. And I was like, oh, a second game to the Final Fantasy franchise? And it's going to be focusing on the girls? This is going to be great. Couldn't wait. More Riku, more Yuna, more Lulu. This is awesome. And then I watched it and I played it and I'm like, this isn't quite the game that I fell in love with. And I ended up not playing Final Fantasy X2. It was not interesting to me. And so I stuck with Final Fantasy X. The franchise that took over from there took over in such violent fashion that I almost forgot about every other game that I owned. And that was when Kingdom Hearts dropped on the PlayStation 2. You see, when I was playing Final Fantasy X, I fell in love with these characters, with Tidus, with Wakka, and then all as well with the other characters there, Kamari and Yuna. I don't have to name the cast. Final Fantasy X, and mind you, I had already started to play through some of the older ones, 7. I touched 8, didn't really get into it too much. I knew about 8 quite a bit, and 9 as well. Well, I started to touch them, but I never really got too far into them. I very much knew who Cloud was. He's like the poster child for Final Fantasy. Tidus is basically just Cloud, by the way. As Kingdom Hearts released, I saw something I never thought I would see. My beloved Final Fantasy X franchise was integrated in the tutorial island of the very game integrating Mickey and Goofy and Donald. I'm like, there's no way. This is going to be such bunk. How can Disney, I was not a fan of them, how could Disney do something cool in this space? This makes no sense. Boy, was I wrong more than I've ever been wrong before. So, Kingdom Hearts released and I went and I got it. I traded in a bunch of games and I got it day one with, you guessed it, the player's guide. Started playing through Destiny's Island and I see Tidus. And I'm like, what? Tidus? Tidus is here? And I see Wakka and I'm like, Wakka? You're here too? And I was like, oh, this is incredible. My boys, I just played 100+ hours of this game and they're in this one. Granted, they're just a part of the tutorial, but I was so latched on to those two characters that I'm like, well, I have to see what's next. go through Kingdom Hearts 1, finish the first opening area, which is Destiny Island, and then you go into Traverse Town, which is the beginning of your adventure where you get to choose which direction you go. Whether after you do all of the basic stuff and learn about the general premise of what's happening with people and their hearts being stolen and them becoming heartless, and you need to continue your adventure, you can choose between one of two different sections. You can choose between going to the Colosseum or going to the Treehouse or Tarzan Land. I couldn't believe those choices existed. It felt to me like I was in charge of my destiny. It felt to me like I could choose my own adventure, and it felt to me that I was actually involved in the process rather than being told what's next. You see, going from something like Final Fantasy X, which is a absurdly linear game, nothing wrong with that, to Kingdom Hearts felt like a completely different experience. You see, Ocarina of Time was the last experience I had in this somewhat open world space in a 3D fashion. I thought, this is really incredible. I was getting the best of all of my favorite worlds. I was getting the adventure-based item leveling kind of excitement that you get from something like Zelda. And then I was getting the, not turn-based, but the RPG elements, stats, I guess, is that statistics? Whatever, stats, as well as leveling your character and grindiness of a JRPG or an RPG in that fashion. And they were combined not only with Final Fantasy X characters, but also with this weird, cartoony, and oddly familiar and not as cheesy Disney intersection. I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's no way they're going to make Mickey Mouse cool. Now, I've always been a fan of Mickey Mouse, but I haven't always been a fan of Disney. In fact, when you're choosing where you're supposed to go, you're looking at a bunch of princesses on the floor of this weird stained glass platform thing, and I'm thinking, this is potentially going to get kind of cheesy. What are we doing here? And I was, again, wrong. You progress through Kingdom Hearts 1 and you get introduced to a laundry list of characters. From Tarzan to Jack Skellington, even Beast, you get to bring these people into your party. Now, Kingdom Hearts came out in 2002, right? 2002. It's a long time ago. I was not even in high school. I was in middle school at the time. This game was so foundational to my gaming life. It changed my interests completely. I got to combine my two favorite franchises into one in a way of gameplay, and I got a new franchise to love. There was only one other franchise from there that really took the forefront of my excitement, and that was Ratchet & Clank, but that is a completely different conversation for a different time. As you guys can tell, I am very much so into story and adventure. And if you want a story and adventure that is absurdly complicated, doesn't make any sense in a lot of ways, and retcons itself 10 times to Wednesday, Kingdom Hearts is absolutely for you. Kingdom Hearts is not unavailable. It's very much so available everywhere. In fact, the PlayStation Portal to me was so valuable because it finally gave me a way to play my Kingdom Hearts games well. I didn't want to play the cloud versions of them over on my Nintendo Switch, but I would have loved to have them in a portable fashion. And so if portably, for me, the only way I can use it is cloud-based on a Switch, I'd rather just stream it on my PlayStation Portal, which has better visuals, better controller, and is native to my PlayStation. I can always just kick over to there and enjoy the game even more. I chose to stake my claim in the portable PC place with my Steam Deck, so the Epic Store isn't as easy to access. While people definitely do it, I am not someone who likes to hack my way into different ways of doing things. I prefer it to be somewhat native because I'm looking for the simplest way to play video games, not necessarily the most versatile way to play video games. And so just yesterday, I think it was announced, but today they finally released a preview for it. The Kingdom Hearts collection, barring 2 games, are coming to the Steam store in June. Now, I said earlier that I'm playing through Majora's Mask with the Discord community. Well, at the beginning of the year, I started to try to get this thing called Play going. Play being a game book club type thing where we all play a game together. And at the beginning of the year, it was supposed to be somewhat more complex with a game a month, a game a quarter, and then a series over the year. Well, as of January 1st, the series over this year was the Kingdom Hearts series. Every game involved in the Kingdom Hearts thing. Now, there's some games that I think are a little bit tough to play through, like Chain of Memories isn't my favorite game. It is a very interesting combat style and somewhat complex in that. But I did play that on the Game Boy Advance, and I also played through plenty of other Kingdom Hearts games, like 358 2.5 days or something. I forgot the exact number. That was on the DS. I played through a ton of Kingdom Hearts games. I stopped after 2 though because I had gotten into different gaming. And also I had kind of fallen out of gaming and wasn't playing it as much. And lastly, I had switched over to a more portable gaming solution with the 3DS and so on. And I had, until really the Nintendo Switch, had completely left the console gaming space. While I did have a PlayStation 4 and I used it from time to time, it really wasn't as much of my cup of coffee, so to speak. I would much prefer to play in handheld fashion wherever I was working or hanging out at the time. That was more for me. And so coming back to Kingdom Hearts, I have not played every game in the series, but I've played a lot of them. And so the very fact that this whole franchise is not only now coming to the Steam Deck, allowing me to play through one of my favorite franchises of all times in not only handheld fashion, but I can dock it as well anywhere natively in an actually good form factor with an OLED display, and I am hoping good performance, has me elated. I would have never thought that I'd be able to, in my wildest dreams back when I was a kid, be able to play games this way. And with the Steam Deck and with them bringing it to Steam, and I not having to give my money over to the Epic Store, because I don't think that the Epic Store is necessarily the best place to stock your library, personally. I think Steam's better. I would have never thought that would be a thing. This is such an incredibly exciting announcement for me. And if you know me or you're a fan of the channel, you know that Kingdom Hearts is a franchise that I hold very close to my heart. I would say that aside from Zelda, because of the nostalgia, Kingdom Hearts is my favorite franchise. I love Final Fantasy because of the turn-based atmosphere. I loved 16 because the story was heavy. But even when people were asking me about 16, I would say it like this. I would ask them if they were a fan of Kingdom Hearts. I would say, did you like Kingdom Hearts? Because 16 takes the mechanics of Kingdom Hearts and amplifies it to a modern day game and adds themes that adults would be able to resonate with and that is more appropriate for an older audience. That is how I would talk about 16. This very game, Sora, this character, this franchise, brings me so much joy in this space, and I am now counting the minutes until it launches on June 13th on the Steam store. And my hope is that I'm able to play this with you guys in a space and we can stream and have a good time together, because this is an exciting time for me to play my one of my absolute favorite franchises that's ever been released. It might be my favorite, but this is my exciting news for the day. This is my cup today. I'm stoked. Join in the live streams over on Twitch. That's where I'm choosing to stream right now. I know some of you are like, why don't you do both? Because I just want to focus in one space. I would love for streaming to take off. So if you're into that sort of thing, please join me over there. We're finishing up Final Fantasy 1. We're going to go to Final Fantasy 10, and hopefully I can finish 10 before Kingdom Hearts 1 releases on Steam. Because once Kingdom Hearts releases on Steam, we are actually going to divert our efforts in the Final Fantasy space, and we are going to play through some Kingdom Hearts on the Steam Deck, streamed onto the Twitch space. All right, guys, you enjoy the rest of your day today, and Comment below if you're a huge Kingdom Hearts fan and what you like about it. If you don't like Kingdom Hearts, that's fine too. All right, guys. Have a good one, and as always,